In this video, I'm going to discuss the location of Babylon and specifically the Tower of Babel. Right now, if we look at our modern textbooks, they'll tell you that Babylon is located and found in the center of Iraq. And although the whole region, I think, at one point might be kind of referred to Babylon or the Babylonian Empire, and certainly areas of it could be ascribed to it as such, I think the ancient Babylon that is actually being referred to in so many accounts in history is actually, surprisingly, in a different location. And part of the reason for that is ancient historical accounts are somewhat different from the actual ruins of Babylon today found today in the center of Iraq. Specifically, the size and length and dimensions of the walls of Babylon, which was considered much greater in distance, in circumference, than the walls that were found at Babel province in the center of Iraq. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read a description according to Herodotus of Babylon. And Herodotus was an ancient historian that lived around roughly 400 years or so before Christ. And he visited Babylon. And this is the account of his description of the city. He says, Assyria possesses a vast number of great cities, whereof the most renowned and strongest at this time was Babylon, whither after the fall of Nineveh the seat of government had been removed. And the following is a description of the place. The city stands on a broad plain and is an exact square. So keep that in mind. We're looking for a broad plain that's in the shape of a square. Okay? And it says it's 120 furlongs in length each way. A furlong is about 1/8 of a mile. So we're looking at a city that's roughly around 15 miles on each side. So a total of around 60 miles all the way around square. But 15 miles on the side. And then it says, so 120 furlongs in length each way. So the entire circuit is 480 furlongs, so roughly about 60 miles. While such is the size, in magnificence, there is no other city that approaches it. It is surrounded in the first place by a broad and deep moat full of water, behind which rises a wall 50 royal cubits in width and 200 in height. So it's about a 300-foot high wall. The royal cubit is longer by 3 fingers' breadth than the common cubit. So we're basically what we're looking for is a city with a huge wall that is about 60 miles in circumference, and that does not match the Babylon that's found in the center of Iraq that most people believe to be the common ruins of Babylon today. So here's the Middle East. Here's Turkey, here's Syria, here's Iraq here. And if you recall, if you watch my other video on Noah's Ark, you'll know that I have the location of Noah's Ark roughly in this region near Sirnak, which means the city of Noah. So if they came down from Noah's Ark and mankind began to spread out on the earth from there, it says that they all were one people and they were one nation, and as they wandered in the east, they came across a plain in the land of Shinar, and they decided to build a city and a tall tower. Okay, well, if they're coming out from the ark along here, they probably would have walked along the edge of the mountains where all the river is, the river valleys, so they would have proper sustenance. There isn't really reason to think that they would head all the way south out into the desert. When you just had these little river systems, they probably would have stuck along the side of the mountains as they're walking. And that would take them directly to the plain here where Haran is located. In addition to that, if this is where the Garden of Eden was, that's kind of back towards the original area where mankind would have originated from before the flood. So there's no reason to think that they wouldn't have gone this direction instead of heading south. And when we go this direction, we do see a large square plain, just like Herodotus described, a plain in the shape of a square. So in addition to that, it says that this is found in the land of Shinar, which is the land between 2 rivers. Well, we do see some examples in this region of cities by the name of Shinar or Sinar, okay, and the region of Sinar. Okay. In addition to that, we have the mountainous region here. There's a mountain by the name of Sinjar, which is in the area as well, all around this region here near San Alurfa and Karasadag and so forth. So the region of Shinar tends to seem to be up in this area here in northern Syria, northern Iraq, southern Turkey, which makes a lot more sense than down here by Baghdad, by Babel province, which is where they believe, down here near the city of Hilla, which is where they believe the ancient ruins of Babylon are today. And so this, they believe, is the ancient city of Babylon here, but it doesn't, it's only about 10 square miles, and it does not correspond to the description of Babylon in ancient historical accounts such as Herodotus, who gives the description of the walls of Babylon being around 60 square miles. So if we look at this, and remember, Herodotus said it was in a square plain. And it also says that when they came from the ark and they were wandering from the east, they came across a plain in the land of Shinar, and there they built the Tower of Babel, the tall tower. So if Babylon, the Tower of Babel was in this square plain where Urfa is, what we need to do then is measure to see if how it measures and compares to the 60 square mile circumference for the city walls, which Herodotus describes. So if we put our measuring tool here to miles, okay, and we do a polygon here. So we'll pick an area here. We'll go. We'll start here. We'll go across, like so. And what we see is this is roughly about 60 miles, 60 square miles. So what we see is that if the city of Babylon has a wall circumference of about 60 square miles and it sits in a square-shaped plain, it much better reflects the description of Herodotus to have that placed in the plain where Haran is found than it does down in central Iraq. So I think we may have two different Babylons that are being talked about here. I think the ancient historical account of Babylon most likely is probably this area. In addition to that, Herodotus mentions that in the center of the city of Babylon, there's a tower that's built, a ziggurat. And there is an astronomical tower here in the city, but it's also, this area right here is also known as the first university in the world, historically, that this was like the first educational center of the whole world. And there's a tall tower there that dates probably till about the Middle Ages, that was an astronomical tower used for doing astronomical observations. And the Chaldeans, or the Babylonians, were known for their astronomical observations. In addition to that, there's a footprint here left behind from where a ziggurat once stood. So if we, according to Herodotus, the circumference of that ziggurat was about a square mile. I'm sorry, not about a square mile, about a furlong in circumference, which is about 666 square feet. So let's switch this to feet, okay? And let's clear this here. Just one second. Okay, so what we can see is the circumference of this footprint here in the center of this citadel in the middle of the plain of where Haran is located. The footprint that's left behind is about a furlong, or 660 square feet in circumference. And that's the description that Herodotus gives of the tower or the ziggurat that's in the center of Babylon. So here again, we have an indication that this most likely was the tower that stood in the center of Babylon. And because this is an area where it was known for astronomical observation, most likely that footprint that we're looking at was where the Tower of Babel probably once stood. And the Tower of Babel probably was a ziggurat. Now, there's an astronomical tower that's still there. And that astronomical tower most likely dates to the Middle Ages. And so here's a 3D depiction produced by Google Earth of the ruins or remains of this particular tower as it stands in Babylon. And so what I also want to show you is here is a medieval depiction of the Tower of Babel from a medieval tapestry, and how similar these two towers look in terms of their construction and so forth. So this particular tower, they believe, was constructed in the Middle Ages or maybe earlier, maybe around the 700s. But there really is there's some debate about when this tower was actually constructed. But they do believe it was used for astronomical purposes because it was built in a plane, and you could go up to the top of the tower and you could see the horizon 360 in all different directions, which is very good for recording astronomical observations, which the Babylonians and Chaldeans were basically known for. And it says that when they built the Tower of Babel, they built a city and a tower that ascended unto heaven. And so what I take that to mean is a tower that ascended unto where they could see the heavens in all directions in order to do astronomical observations. That's kind of my interpretation of what it meant by that, a tall tower that it would ascend into the heights of heaven. So that doesn't mean that necessarily this is the remaining Tower of Babylon, this unfinished tower here that's described in the Bible. This one may have been constructed in the Middle Ages or even earlier, but the footprint left behind where the ziggurat was, that may be the original location of the earlier Tower of Babel, that may have been constructed at a earlier date still. And you can see some examples. Here's the actual picture of the tower here, and here's some of the ruins of the city around it. Let's see if they have some other pictures here. Let's see. Here's a picture of the tower here. You can see it standing in the distance. It's actually very tall. That doesn't do it justice. It's a very tall tower. But you can see this is a flat plain that it's in, and it's a very good area for doing astronomical observations. The Bible also says that Babylon was referred to as the king of the north. And if you look on a map of the Middle East, as we scroll out of this plane here, and so we'll adjust the map so it's perfectly north. Here's Jerusalem down here, and Babylon, the ruins of Babylon as they're given today, is to the east. But this plane here is to the north. So it would seem to me, and also Ur is there, Ur the Chaldees. There's a city called Urfa. So this seems to me to be the land of the Chaldeans. This is a more likely candidate for me for the actual Babylon being described in the Bible and in ancient times. And this whole region can be referred to as Babylon. So there might be, maybe they after the fall of Babylon, maybe the bricks were taken down there because they wouldn't destroy the bricks. I mean, I'm not sure why there's a secondary Babylon down in Iraq, but I don't necessarily believe that's the correct Babylon. I think the Babylon of ancient history is probably this area here, which, incidentally, if you watch my other videos, I think is a good candidate for the original Garden of Eden. And so in the center of the Garden of Eden was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And if that's also the location where they built the Tower of Babel for astronomical observations, and they're practicing astrology and so forth, this is a form of the knowledge of good and evil that was perhaps carried on or represented after the flood. So this is where I think the Tower of Babel once stood. Now that's not to say that the city of Haran itself is actually Babylon. I think my kind of understanding of the way that the description of Babylon is it's such a large area that what it may be is an enclosed off area with a number of cities inside surrounded by different farm fields and so forth, that this large area here might have incorporated maybe a number of cities, of which Haran would have been possibly the center city. So that's one possibility as to the location of Babylon, but I think it fits a little bit more with the ancient description. Now, I'm not ruling out the possibility that the history books have it correct and that this actually is Babel down here. There's a lot of good reasons also to believe that's the case. But the Babel down here certainly doesn't fit the description of the walls of Babylon that were given in ancient times. So I think this might be a much more likely candidate for both Babylon and the Tower of Babel. So I appreciate you watching this video, and I hope you'll check out future videos as I progress here with this series. And we're going to be doing some other videos on actually going through the Bible itself, chapter by chapter. So I hope you'll take a time to look at those and look at some of the other videos I've done as well. But I appreciate your time, and we'll see you in the next video. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. All right, thank you very much.